Balloon because there's like no physical attraction. I popped my balloon because I just wasn't attracted.
And I popped my balloon because you didn't really know what you wanted to say. You didn't know what you do. You forgot for a second. You forgot your name. Like, I just don't feel anything, to be honest.
Well, why you say that? What do you mean you don't feel anything?
Like, I don't feel like I want to get to know you. If I see you, I just walk past. It don't give me that energy.
And why did you pop your balloon?
I think we'd be better off as friends.
As friends?
I popped my balloon because honestly, I was trying to give the benefit of the doubt. The retwist.
The retwist?
Yeah.
Damn. Is he your type?
It was working for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Man, that's crazy. The sisters played me. But the snow bunny said he type for me. This is why she's not.
Hey, Shalom. Giving all praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. And double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone. And Shalom to you, hopefully elect. I'm your brother Yahweh Call from Great Millstone, Orlando, And something that I've been telling brothers from day one, hey, as far as on this side, and the environment that you're in, or the environment that we're in, you got to you got to get what's conducive for you in your environment. All right. And I say it like that because, we talk about Keisha, Eve in general, just how much of a non-factor, unfortunately to say, on this side, as far as Eve, the Israelite woman is on this side, but nevertheless, she's going to be the most sought for in the kingdom, especially the so-called black woman. Like I said, as much as we get on, specifically the so-called black woman, she's going to be bad as hell in the kingdom, but that's in the kingdom, when we're in our natural estate, in our environment. All right. When things are the way that's supposed to be, Eve, she's going to be in her right mind, and so on and so forth. That's when Eve, and especially the so-called black woman, that's when she'll be conducive. All right. For us in the kingdom. But as far as us right now, the Israelite man, in this environment, again, you got to get what's conducive, what works for you in this environment. And sad to say, hey, like I said, this is something that I've been telling brothers since day one. You better get you a concubine, man. You better get you a white woman. Get you a little Shedemite or Moabite. If you're looking for something more submissive, right, ladylike, whatever the case may be, as far as feminine, yeah, because Eve, she's just not it right now, she's just not where it's at as of right now. As you see in this clip, it be your own, like they say, right? But hey, these other nations, they lust. The women of these other nations, they lust after the Israelite man. All right, especially the so-called black man. And with all this right now, because a lot of Israelites that call themselves being in the truth, a lot of these Israelites, they have a real worldly spirit on them. All right, a world friendly doctrine. All right, you got a lot of Israelites, man. They talking about you can only have one wife right now, and you got other emotional Israelites. They talk about how when it comes to dealing with the other nations, it's wrong, it's off, right? Because this is a very touchy topic for a lot of Israelites, But nevertheless, we are to have concubines. As a matter of fact, because again, the spirit that's out there as of right now, a lot of brothers, brothers posted, doing videos centered around the Isaiah 4:1 spirit. That vibration is out there, and that what's going to entail that as well would be the woman of the other nations. All right, woman of the other nations coming up to the men of the Lord, because hey, There's nothing wrong with having concubines, and like I said, man, that's what, and this is just sound advice, you know, because that's just what would be conducive for you on this side, you know, if you're looking for a woman that's more, you know, feminine, all right, more, you know, attracted to you as a man, as a person, whatever the case may be. Because as of right now, Eve, man, she's just not for us. All right, she's not for the Israelite man. And as a matter of fact, she's an enemy, unfortunately. You know, sad to say. You know, so why not get something that works for you? You know, but nevertheless, because again, this can be a touchy subject for a lot of Israelites as far as dealing with the women of the other nations. You know, concubines, which are nothing but lesser wives. All right, wives of a lesser status. You know. So let's go through a few scriptures. Comes to mind is what's that? 2 Samuel 5 and 13. Matter of fact, let's start at 12 because I've been meditating on this. Brought it out a few times recently. 2 Samuel 5 and 13. And David took him, verse 12, 2 Samuel 5 and 12. And David perceived that Yahweh had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sakes. Because you see, King David, he thought that at that time, being that things were going so good, you know, things were just going right for King David. So he perceived that to be the kingdom being established. Now, of course, that wasn't the kingdom. All right. You know, but nevertheless, when you read verse 13, it says, and took, and David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David. So you see, now David being a man after the Lord's own heart. All right. You know, nowhere in the scriptures does it mention King David or any of our other forefathers that took on concubines. All right. Nowhere in the scriptures does it mention how they were going off. You know, you might, well, to those that don't have understanding, they might use the account with King Solomon, right? But when you actually read the account, King Solomon, he didn't go off from having concubines because, you know, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, you know, and he wasn't off for having concubines, all right? But more so he went off because of the simple fact that he started worshiping their idols, all right? That's where King Solomon went off, all right? You know, because, you know, the concubines are not to be, like I said, man, they're just wives of a lesser status, you know. Concubine, she's more so supposed to be a helpmeet for your helpmeet, you know. And we've got examples of that too. Matter of fact, real quick before I move on, I'm gonna grab this in what's that? 1 Chronicles 2 and 3. The sons of Judah, and Onan and Shelah, which 3 were born unto him of the daughter of Shua, the Canaanites. And the firstborn of Judah, was evil in the sight of the Lord, and he slew him. So the point being that Judah, he had children by a concubine, all right? You know, because the Canaanites, they're heathens, you see? And like I mentioned with King David, what I just read, all right? King David, he had children by concubines, all right? You know, because nevertheless you have children by concubines, they're still Israelites, all right? You know, now again, a stumbling block that's out there, because again, you have a lot of emotional Israelites. They'll say that an Israelite man that has a seed by a concubine, by a heathen woman, that they would say that's a mamzer, but or a bastard, you know. But a real mamzer is an Israelite woman that has conceived seed by a heathen man, all right? You know, that's what a real mamzer is. You know, that's what a real bastard is. An Israelite woman that has a child by a heathen man. All right. But nevertheless, as far as an Israelite man having children by a heathen woman, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. And in fact, this is going to take place in the kingdom, believe it or not. All right. Brothers are going to have concubines in the kingdom, you know, and that's only right. It's only fair. You know, these other nations, they took our women, All right. You know, and hey, we're going to take their woman. And of course, everything's going to be done in righteousness. All right. Matter of fact, let's go here. Let's go here, man. In Deuteronomy 21. Deuteronomy 21 and 10, starting at 10. It says domestic relations, right? When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and Yahweh thy power hath delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and has a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife. Then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and part her nails. And she shall put the remnant of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. So you see, concerning the women of the other nations, all right, when they become a spoil, you know, there's a certain time to where, you know, they a certain process they go through. They mourn, you know, you give them time to mourn, and then after that period, whether she likes it or not, all right, you know, like it tells you, what is that, where's that at? Where is that at? I think that's Genesis. Bear with me. I think that's Genesis. No, that's not it. But basically, man, because like I said, whether she liked it or not, when it came time to her, you know, for the man to go in unto her, like I said, whether she liked it or not, all right, or even more so, you can save that woman up for you can either take her for yourself or save her for your son, you know, save it for one of your sons, you know. That's another thing as well, you know. But nevertheless, when it came down to, you know, what I just read here, all right, and the Lord delivering our enemies into our hand, all right, because there's times when the Lord told us not to deal with the, you know, the heathens of the other nations. You know, there's times where the Lord said, hey, kill them all. But there's times that the Lord said, hey, he basically gave the green light to, hey, you know, take their women, take their children, you know, as captives, or whatever the case may be. All right. Because there's nothing wrong with having a concubine, man. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. All right. In the eyes of Yahweh Shema Shai. Now, like I said, a lot of Israelites get emotional off that. But hey, you know, we don't deal with emotions over here. And that's why you can't read the scriptures with a Western type of mindset. All right. As a matter of fact, like I use example, King David taking them concubines and having children, right? Judah, he had children by concubine, right? Genesis 16 and 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto him, Salakia, and Sarai said unto Abram, behold, now Yahweh have restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto thy maid, go in unto my maid. Because like I said, basically concubine, she was the helpmeet of the helpmeet. All right, and of course, the Israelite woman was set up to be an helpmeet unto the man, you know, unto her husband. All right, you know, and oftentimes, hey, Eve, she would have helpmates, or a handmaid. She would have a helpmeet. You know, for examples like this, if the woman, you know, if whatever the case may be, if she couldn't have children, hey, you know, oftentimes if she had a handmaid, hey, she would bring her handmaid unto her husband. You know, and you so-called women, you want to talk about being a real woman, All right. Well, hey, this is this is an example of a real woman. All right, because the scriptures go into, and I've said this before, how, you know, like the scriptures say, the things are written aforetime were written for our learning. Well, that applies to you women as well, because you could read about the different qualities and traits of our foremothers, such as Sarai, whose name was later changed to Sarah, which goes into princess. You know, because you women of the nation, you Israelite women, you're gonna get your status back. All right, you know, for brothers, you want to question if you have and I wholeheartedly agree with apostles, brothers, when they talk about how, hey, there's no such thing as a woman in the truth. Me personally, there's no such thing as a woman in the truth. All right,